Greetings, friends of liberty. Now surely, hardly anyone amongst us, even of those who have had the least education, would remain unaware of the famous poem by Thomas Gray entitled Ode on the Death of a Favourite Cat Drowned in a Tub of Goldfishes. By tub, Miss here actually meant a white and blue Chinese vase owned by Whig politician Horace Walpole. A vase that one can see on display today if one asks for it at the Earl of Orford's mansion in Twickenham in South London. The vase, as expected, is of porcelain and very smooth, and thus Walpole's poor cat, Selima, once she'd fallen in, had no easy way to haul herself out again. Our poet Gray, whom Walpole asked to write a poem in remembrance of Selima, at first describes her behaviour as she watches the goldfish swimming about in the vase. Her conscious tale her joy declared, the fair round face, the snowy beard, whiskers, the velvet of her paws, her coat that with a tortoise vise, a hard coat, her ears of jet, and emerald eyes, she saw and purred applause. He then says, with many an ardent wish, she stretched in vain to reach the prize, the glittering goldfish. What female heart can gold despise? What cat's averse to fish? And then Selima's tragic ending. Again she stretched, again she bent, nor knew the gulf between. Malignant fate sat by and smiled. The slippery verge her feet beguiled. She tumbled headlong in. May times, emerging from the flood, she mewed to every watery god, some speedy aid to send. No dolphin came, no nereid stirred, nor cruel Tom nor Susan heard. A favourite has no friend. Now I must add that Selima's demise in failing to find purchase on the slippery slopes of this vase to climb out is very much in contrast to, and her fate was never shared by my own cat, Poseidon, that I loved and knew well. Poseidon, who grew up with me as a boy, was so named precisely because he was so at home in water, his mother having taught him as a kitten to wait patiently and to fish at stream's edge for minnows, tadpoles, or even small fish. With a lightning-quick scoop of his paw, he'd snatch them all direct from the water. No Indonesian fishing cat could have done it better. And if, as rarely happened, he lost his footing, he simply swam back to shore, shook himself off, and licked his fur dry. 'Tis a shame that Walpole's tub offered no similar natural circumstance to Selima. Now if we turn to the issue of cats and their manifold capacities to entrance, enchant, and beguile us with their feline charm, and with their 9 lives to escape most dangerous situations, whether in my 18th century, more in your own 21st century, throughout the entirety of the civilized and uncivilized world today, we find Stephen Budiansky's The Character of Cats, his companion volume to The Truth About Dogs, which I previously reviewed. Budiansky, a former editor of Nature and successful author of 19 books, did such a superlative job there that I was not disappointed in giving this feline counterpart a try. Our author begins by pointing out, to tell the scientific story of dogs is to risk bringing down the wrath of legions of myth-soaked animal lovers, saturated as they are with tales of canine daring do, loyalty, and unconditional love. Whatever that means. No one has any illusions about cats. Dog science inevitably is about shattering myths. Cat science, rather more happily, is about explaining mysteries. In the case of cats, this means specifically that while the larger cats, the lions, tigers, jaguars, and leopards, are often studied, the smaller felines, such as the varied wildcats of Europe, Africa, and Asia, hardly ever. But this has been more than recompensed by the many studies of domestic cats in laboratories, they figuring prominently in early studies of intelligence and learning and psychology, largely because they were so readily available and so cooperative. In addition, one can study many human diseases such as hemophilia, diabetes, and Tay-Sachs disease using cats. A peculiar fact is that the overwhelming majority of domestic animals who have been tamed are social animals, like sheep, goats, chickens, dogs, camels, pigs, and horses. But cats, of course, are individualists, and apart from rare exceptions like lions, cheetahs, and jaguarundis, usually solitary. How did they and we come to be companions? Because the cats chose us. As Budiansky notes, only about a quarter of cat owners say they deliberately made an effort to acquire a cat. Their cats acquired them. The closest thing in the wild to a house cat is a wildcat. They're still thriving everywhere. One of the main differences between the two is that the domestic cat has longer intestines, likely because it eats more plant food, much greater color variation, a smaller size, and is more social. As a result of these differences, the house cat, Felis catus, is regarded as a subspecies of the wildcat, Felis silvestris. The problem evolutionarily in understanding the origins of the greater sociability of domestic cats, who can live in their own feral colonies and easily with humans, is that there is nothing in the cat's immediate ancestry to account for this sociability. The challenge then is to understand why cats adopted humans, since it appears cats had no particular need to throw their lot in with man to survive. This even leading Budiansky to wonder whether cats are really domesticated. As proof of this speculation, he offers the case of cheetahs, who are fairly easily tameable, a typical example being that of a Mughal prince who kept hundreds of cheetahs at one time. The animals were said to be playful, loyal, and affectionate once tame. Much the same can also be said of the caracal. The first excessive evidence of cats as pets was in Egypt around the 10th century BC. Despite their export being forbidden during Roman times, cats were found throughout the ancient world. In the Middle Ages, Budiansky argues that while it's true that cats were persecuted by the church, many other animals were as well. Fast forward to modern America, there are probably about equal numbers of unowned and owned cats. Budiansky uses the fierceness of many feral cats, contrasting it with the tameability of the African wildcat, to argue that much of the behavioral differences that separate domestic cats from their wild counterparts are really not genetic, although the fact that feral cats can still live in large colonies remains a significant difference. Overall, the fur of cats can be categorized by 6 characteristics: having a tabby or a solid color, a mackerel or striped appearance, ticked or non-ticked, a dense or dilute color, short hair like 95% of cats or long hair, orange or non-orange, white spotting or non-spotted, and pure white or normal color. The gene for orange coat color appears to have originated in Asia Minor and may have been spread by the Vikings to the north and west coasts of Scotland and to the Faroe Islands. with the New World even farther to the west having many more orange cats. Incidentally, the mutant gene responsible for extra toes is a trait that appears to have arisen in New England in colonial times. 6+ toed cats make up about 4% of the cat population in Salem and Boston versus about 0.01% in New York. There is relatively little inbreeding in cats compared to dogs, since dogs have so many more purebreds. When it comes to hunting, it's clear that no matter how social and friendly they may be towards other cats and people, cats always hunt by themselves. And like all animals that evolve to be solitary and territorial, cats have strongly instinctive methods of advertising their territory by, like dogs, marking it with urine. During walking, females sprayed on average once an hour, toms a dozen times an hour. The sprayed urine also contains a scent, feline, made of fatty acids and pheromones that is not normally present. Among males, the amount of testosterone determines aggression, peaking at 12 months and sometimes varying by month. Toms, like lions, can have the tendency to kill kittens because once they do, the females stop producing milk and will be available for mating again. In terms of comparing the sociability of dogs and cats, Budiansky says that dogs who live in a household seek in effect to recreate the wolf pack structure with the other members of the household. A pack is like a conventional army unit. But cats who find themselves living in a group are more like commandos who have been trained to carry out daring solo missions on their own and now find themselves with a bunch of other commandos, all on exactly the same mission. Sometimes cats will engage in dominance behavior, but this isn't really usually hierarchical, but just one dictator lording it over all the other cats. In these instances, the top cat does not exert the sort of group control commonly seen in social animals. Females in the wild will often band together to create communal support areas for their kittens, a type of extended feline kindergarten. Kittens of different mothers may share the same nest and may be nursed by females other than their own mother too. This is a consequence of overflowing maternal instincts. When it comes to other cats' behaviors, rolling on the ground can indicate submissiveness to other cats or the desire to play, like dogs do when they bow with their front legs before playing. B, fearful cats dilate their pupils and aggressive cats narrow their gaze. C, cats, of course, rub with various parts of their body, such as chin, lips, and forehead, because of the oil glands found there to mark things. D, scratching, of course, tests and can loosen old claws. They also pulling off claws with their teeth. And E, cats, of course, produce a wide range of vocalizations, ranging from a murmur from mother to kitten, to a growl, to many types of meows, to hissing, with or without spitting, and yowling. Purring is generated by very rapid and very regular nerve impulses sent directly from the central nervous system to the muscles of the diaphragm and to the vocal cords. When we turn to the question of cat intelligence, Budiansky cautions, as he did with dogs, that testing their intelligence can be challenging for a number of reasons, since it is hard to get cats to show what they know, especially in a laboratory setting. Social rewards and punishments that are highly effective in teaching dogs and horses are almost meaningless to cats. What we do know is that A, cats can only see greens and blues, so tests must accommodate their relative color blindness. B, what cats lose in color vision, they make up with their ability to see in low light conditions when much of their hunting takes place. C, cats' visual acuity is about 4 to 10 times worse than that of humans. This corresponds to something around 20/80 vision. comparable to that of dogs. D, cats' sense of smell is much worse than dogs, but sense of hearing much better, only inferior among mammals to bats. E, Budiansky believes that cats, quite logically, have great areas of their brains hardwired to hunt, which would show why they sometimes hunt when they're not hungry and why they are opportunistic hunters. And F, relatively great areas of their brains, something like 40%, are devoted to their whiskers as sensors. So, seeing these capabilities, when we now turn to testing cat intelligence, we find that cats, A, can often generalize from a problem to other similar problems fairly quickly. B, learn very quickly if they get the first answer right, but very slowly, if ever, if they get the first answer wrong. C, are, by temperament, simply quite averse to putting up with frustrating situations. They tend to become lackadaisical or indifferent when faced with situations that yield no clear path to a reward. With Budiansky arguing that learning is a matter of smarts, but also a matter of temperament and personality. D, cats tend to be egocentric when making maps of the world, referring spatial positions to their own position and not to external landmarks. E, cats, like dogs, but unlike monkeys, fail the mirror test. In other words, they don't recognize themselves in a mirror. F, instinctively cats will learn quickly to do something with their paws, but will almost never connect licking or grooming themselves in order to achieve some lab reward. So it'll never compute for a cat, for example, that when he licks or grooms himself, that licking causes a trapdoor to open. I can't say I blame them, since I don't think I'd make the connection either. G, cats raised on a farm solve learning problems better than lab cats. And H, the best way to teach cats, as many animals, is to break the learning down into small chunks, slowly progressing to the goal. Then, when they've learned the whole sequence of events, stop rewarding them every single time. Now let's examine cat personalities. A, one of the most striking attributes of cats is their personalities are very varied, more than other animals, ranging from the scaredy cat, to the tolerant cat, the crazy cat, the playful cat, the lazy cat, the affectionate cat, the bossy cat, bossy, to the fierce and aggressive cat. In addition, B, if kittens aren't handled within a window of about from 2 to 7 weeks from birth by some human being, they will have much less chance of being comfortable with any human beings. C, kittens who haven't been socialized with others can have problems learning later how to deal with others of their species. This, of course, happens with the children of Homo sapiens as well. And D, cats as hunters tend to specialize in one type of prey. Turning now to cat problems or problem cats. Just as we can find on YouTube a video of a dog that started chewing on a battery, starting an electrical fire that burned the entire living room, with the fire department fortunately coming in time to save the house, so too a cat once started a fire by urinating on an electrical cord. A, because once cats have a bad experience, it's hard for them to unlearn that experience. Trying to actively train a cat to overcome his fear sometimes carries with it a bit of the feeling of trying to reason with an hysterical person. B, the primary cat problems are aggression towards other cats or humans, then less frequently inappropriate defecation, and even less frequently problems like anorexia, wool eating, eating houseplants, excessive vocalization, and scratching. Solutions? For spraying, castration will fix the problem in 80% of toms. Using drugs can sometimes result in behavior cessation, at which point the cat may be retrained not to spray. With scratching, Budiansky suggests it is dealt with most effectively through subterfuge rather than by classical conditioning. Providing grass may reduce or eliminate plant eating. And with biting, Budiansky argues that cats may quickly feel during petting that their private space is being violated, thus sometimes feeling contradictory feelings. However, sometimes aggression can be redirected from other stimuli, like seeing an outdoor cat. With meowing, he suggests perhaps some moderate success might be achieved with a squirt gun. Budiansky cautions that often cats, as dogs, can do destructive things just to get attention, so the contradictory goal is to not reward bad behavior when you punish them. Budiansky concludes by reviewing the never-ending debate about whether and in what kinds of neighborhoods and for what reasons cats can be let out. The long-term trend is for fewer and fewer cats to gain their freedom to roam and have outdoor adventures due to the dangers in some areas to themselves of coyotes and cars, and also the danger the cats themselves present to birds and wildlife. Happy for my part that we English are, in this era of the Enlightenment, becoming ever more wise in choosing to have cats as pets. I bid you well, and remain Scarlet Pimpernel.